Hello, hello. Good almost afternoon. Oh my gosh, it's 11:45 already. Slept in a little bit and did a bunch of work beforehand. Um yeah, gonna take a little bit of time here to allow people to come into the stream while we're waiting. I've already set up our painting. This painting is called Luminous. And this is like the fourth day working on it, I think, because I had so much trouble with the drawing that actually there's one drawing on the back of this that I abandoned, and then I started redrawing it on the front. That was 2 days. So the back and then the front, and then a redraw on the front a second or a third time. I can't remember. So pretty far into this. And that happens. We'll struggle with drawings and things like that. The reference that I'm working from, I should probably just put this on the stream somewhere in text. So there's the reference I'm going to be working from. You can get these reference images from satinezilla.com. Let me see if I can put some text on here real quick that will give that .com, because I like really supporting, people, right? I like supporting things that are done well. SATINEZILLAH.com. And look how big that is. Massive. Can bring this down really small. Right underneath our reference here. That way, if anybody has any questions of where that's coming from, you can see it there, satinezilla.com. Yeah. Support the people that are out there. It's so important, especially when I'm using their imagery so much. I definitely want to support them. I definitely want it to be, this idea of abundance, of there's enough out there for all of us to make a living on. There's you do good work, and there's going to be more than enough people that are going to help support me, maybe, and hopefully help support Satine with the amazing photography that they do. So yeah, go check that website out for their references. They're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And a whole bunch of others that I use sometimes, like Graphit Studio and Obscure 28 and Mills Ref Images. Lots of nudity, so be careful there, okay? If you're sensitive to nude figures, be careful on that website. They're tasteful, though. I think they're very tasteful. Okay. So today we get to start painting on this. Yay, finally painting. And I want to talk about the main purpose for today's video is starting detailed, okay? Starting detailed on a painting. Now, normally, I start paintings, and you've seen it maybe in the previous streams as I'm trying to pick out, the best brush to start with, or one that I want to start with, probably a big brush. Always start with a big brush. On the previous paintings I did, I would go in and I'd block in bigger areas, okay? And get kind of an understanding of value and some close color to the entirety of the painting before I go into details. It's kind of, we start broad and then we kind of go down into the details afterwards. But there are ways to start with detail. And the problem with starting with detail is if you get super detailed, like on the hand here, especially within drawing, and that's why it took forever for me to do this, because I started out too detailed on the drawing. Let me zoom out. No, I'm not going to zoom out. It's good. And I couldn't balance the whole of the drawing with starting out in detail. And it was like, okay, the hand is too small or the head's too big, like things like the proportions are just off. And the same thing can happen with painting. When we're painting, if we start with detail, not only can we lose the drawing, just like if we're drawing with graphite, But we'll get so detailed in one area, and then we'll find later on, as we get the entirety of our canvas full of paint, that the colors that we started out with and the values we started out with were way off. And then there's a bunch of correction within that. So I'm going to show you how to start detailed, quote unquote detailed. You know, it depends on how detailed we can start. So I do think I want to start with a smaller brush. But how we can start, you know, somewhat detailed within these paintings and still hold the entirety of the painting together, so that if you start with your focal point, your values, your hue and your saturation will be pretty close. Your drawing will be pretty close, and it won't be so incongruent and garish from everything else. You're still holding all that together. Now I'm working on 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. Hot press because it's super smooth. This is as smooth watercolor paper as you can get. And my eye is itching. And I have coated the front with 2 coats of PVA Size by Gamblin and 1 coat on the back to straighten the paper back out. You can see it's still kind of a little bouncy there. Got some bounciness, you know. It's still much more stiff than canvas, is one reason why I like this rather than canvas. Canvas has a lot of give to it, and sometimes I don't like that. I'll be working with, this is all Winsor & Newton Winton paints. So the student brand, you know, Winsor & Newton Winton, I love them. I love Winton paints. They're inexpensive, and you can get opaque reds and yellows inexpensively. Super great. What else? Brushes, cheap brushes. Well, this is not a cheap brush. This is actually a Rosemary & Company brush. I have just a few expensive brushes by Rosemary & Company, and these are, what do they call them? The ivory curved long flats. You know, these guys, I have several of these, and I have some shorter ones. My go-to brushes you can't buy anymore because the Joanne Fabric went out of business, but these are Art Smith brushes. I love these brushes. They're so cheap, cost me a few cents per brush, and that's what I'm going to be working with. Okay, enough of the preamble. Let's get into it. Number 1, when we're painting detailed, we do need to establish some ideas first. Now, my reference, as you see up here, that reference, look how black that is. See how black that background is? I don't want to paint that dark, okay? I like to compress my value range. What does that mean, compressing? Well, you'll see my value scale here. White is off the top. You can't see white. And then this is black, which is off the bottom. That's close to black, not quite, you know, and the values will look different on the camera than they do in person. They'll look a lot darker in a lot of places, but I want to compress that value range. I don't want to get that dark black on there, so I'll probably bring my value range up to somewhere here in the darks and stay around here for the light areas. Value is number 1 with everything that we do, especially representational painting. If you want to describe form, value is what does that for you. Value works hard. Color just makes it look good for the most part. So I know that I'm going to compress my value range. Let's be specific with it. Rada Bagada. But do you put gesso on the paper first, or is it not necessary? No, I don't actually. This is just the paper with the PVA Size right on top of it. Works really well. You can gesso paper. I've done like gray gesso before, or white gesso. I've even done clear acrylic binder. It's called GAC 100 by Golden. I like the PVA Size a bit better because it gives me the absorbency that I want. And to be specific here, I like being very specific on these things. If you gesso anything, especially paper, you're going to have, it's going to be absorbent. Gesso has less absorbency than raw paper, but it's pretty absorbent, right? So you put oil paint on there, it's going to suck a lot of that oil out, which is great in a lot of cases. I painted on raw paper, painted on gesso. Depending on the subject matter, it's great. So it has like the level absorbency, I would go this way, like very absorbent, raw paper. A little bit less absorbent is gesso, acrylic gesso. And then after that would be 1 coat of PVA size on raw paper is a little bit less absorbent than just gesso. 2 coats of PVA size, even less absorbent on raw paper. And then super unabsorbent is UPO paper, YUPO paper. That's the whole gambit of like paperish kind of unabsorbency. I like PVA size because I can get the absorbency that I want, but it has 0 texture to it. Usually when I'm putting gesso on there, or even that GAC 100 clear acrylic thing, you leave some brush texture, right? And the clear acrylic and the PVA size is great because you can draw out and then go over it and you still see your drawing beneath. With gesso, you can't really see your drawing beneath. So it's like you have to draw on the gesso. And depending on the gesso, sometimes the graphite will not hold well. And I know that was a lot of information for your one question, but this is going to be on my channel so you can go back and review or ask more questions as you're on there. So I'm going to be compressing these values, number 1, okay? So I need to understand that. And value is the very first thing that I'm going to be thinking about. I'm going to be working on value, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably 8 right here for my darkest dark, maybe a little bit darker. And then probably 2 or 3 for my lightest light, okay? And I know the background is going to be a gray color, so I'm going to mix that up first. I'm going to mix up my 8 value. And I know I told you, hey, I'm going to be working, detailed first. I'm going to show you how to keep a painting held together while working in detail first. And this is part of the process. Look at that. I mixed that 8 right on, right away. I can even cover up some of those. Maybe it's a little bit lighter. I can cover up some of those test color marks that I put on my value chart there. So why am I mixing this up? This is my darkest dark. I want to go ahead and establish it. It's even happening in the hair. The darkest dark is happening here in some places, but definitely in the background. I want to establish what that looks like. And then I'm going to put it in a place close to where I want to start. So I'm going to go right there with it. And just that, done. Okay. And I've established what my darkest dark looks like. Now everything else, You're welcome, Radha. I like your name though, Radha Bagata. It's got a great alliteration to it. Radha Bagata. Anyway, what's great about that is every single color that I put on my canvas now, or my paper here, will not get darker than that. That is my darkest dark. Anytime I see black within my reference up here, it's going to be that. Or a very dark brown, like in the hair, this super dark in the hair, it's going to be that, but maybe a bit warmer, have a little bit of my cadmium red and ivory and then yellow ochre in it. Okay, now we want to establish our lightest light. Okay, now I can progress up into the white of the paper. And I know one thing that I want to do, and this is all about planning. Like we plan these things out when we start. These fingers here that are getting hit by light, like directly, that is going to be my center of interest. This is focal point plus that orange reflected light that happens from the hand onto the face. But what I want to do with these fingers is leave as much of that white paper as possible. This is the main reason why I've put 2 coats of PVA size on this paper, because I can scrape back to the paper and get this amazing glow that you can't get with just adding white to your paint. Okay. So that's important there. That white is as white as our lightest light. So everything, like all the other lighter colors, like in the hair, there's some highlights in the hair. There's some light on the nose here. There's some halftones within the hands. Most of it is very bright right away. There's halftones here in the shoulder and there in this fabric. Those will be my quote unquote lightest light in those other areas. And now I'm going to mix that up. Now for these lightest lights I want to do, there is going to be a little bit of black involved. So ivory black there to kind of gray things out, but mostly it's going to have some yellow ochre to warm it up. I can see by the reference here that the photographer, Satine Zilla, that's why I put the URL there if you want to look at their website for their amazing reference images. I know that this is a very warm light that's hitting this figure. It's not super warm. It's not a very warm light. I can see that by the hair. It's probably a little bit, probably like 5,000 Kelvin or something like that. And I want to stay around that color. Still a little bit too light. So let's darken it up a bit with black and yellow ochre. We're going to bring it down not only in saturation, but also in value. As soon as you add white or black to any color you mix up, you're going to be reducing saturation. Look at that. It blends in perfectly to that gray. Mixed it up perfect. Okay. And then I'm going to just throw this down. Look how gray and dark that looks against the paper. It's intentional. I'm planning ahead on this painting, okay? And I'm just going to put that down. Done, okay? Now that we've established lightest light in certain areas, that is not like transparent, going all the way back to the paper like on here. Now we have our lightest light and our darkest dark established. We can see that. We can compare directly on our paper, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm giving an understanding to my brain and my eyes. We don't want to go darker than that, definitely. And the only places we're going to go lighter than this is in the fingers. Now I'm talking just value here. That has nothing to do with saturation. I mean, it does kind of. I mean, when you talk about color, you're always talking about hue, value, saturation. You're always talking about all three of those. If you mix anything into a color that you already have, you're going to affect hue, value, saturation. Always, always, always. Can't separate them. So, but for the most part, it's all about value here. Can this light area get more yellow? Yes. More intense? Yes. You know, more red, intense red? Yes. With my limited palette, the Zorn palette? Yes, definitely. But we're not going to focus on that for this initial. Next thing I'm going to do, you notice I've got two brushes already, one for my dark, one for my light, smaller brushes. Now I'm going to establish saturation, the furthest point of saturation. And I'm looking for a particular small brush. I have way too many brushes. You know, I'm fine with working with a limited palette. I should push myself to work with limited brushes as well. That would be kind of fun. Why is this so hard this morning? Why am I sitting here? No, just pick a brush, Chris. Just pick one. Yeah, this guy. Just go, 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 go. Now I want to establish saturation. Now, even with a limited palette, oh, look, we've got the cadmium red is skinned over. Let me get my palette knife out. The great thing about oil paint is, you know, it's been several days since I painted because I've been working on this drawing for days. But you can leave these big chunks of paint out on your palette, and the internal of them will not adjust at all. It'll skin over, and you still have a lot of really good flowing paint within there. Now with the Zorn palette, the only accent yes, it is a Zorn palette, Rada Bagada. And to be specific, titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red hue, and then ivory black, all in Winsor Newton Winton. I love Winsor Newton Winton because you can get the cadmium red hue and the cadmium yellow in opaque colors. And I like working my reds and yellows up opaquely. Now this is the most intense color that we can get with the Zorn palette, just red right out of the tube. Our most intense yellow is yellow ochre right out of the tube. And if we add those two together, this is the most intense orange we can get, okay? That's our most intense. And maybe you're understanding what I'm doing right away. what I'm doing is, have you ever worked in Photoshop or any kind of like, program where you have sliders, right? Where you have this like horizontal bar, and on one side is one extreme and on the other side is another extreme. So we're doing that in two different ways. The first thing we were working with was value, and I established my extremes in value, my darkest dark and my lightest light. And now we're working with saturation. Look at that big chunky S there, right? My extremes in saturation. This is the most extreme orange. And when we look at the reference there, the orange reflected on the face and in that light of that hand, that's going to be my most extreme saturated color. And so I want to set that down, and I want to go as extreme as I can with it right at the beginning. And I'm just going to put this in a place really close to here. I think I'm going to put it right on the top of this ear. Right there. That's my most saturated color. I don't like this brush. Here we go. I'll pick this one. Of course, I can establish this in a couple other places. Right where that light turns into shadow. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, that reference is really tiny, but something that you'll notice with life in general and in the way light reacts is if you look at right before, like a form turns, like these fingers will turn, and they're in the most extreme light, the brightest bright that I can get within this reference. But as it turns into shadow, right before it goes into shadow, it gets even more intense. Like those are the most intense places. And that's how light reacts. Even a little bit on the nose there, that's what happens right before it turns into shadow. The only other place you can get something just as intense is within reflected light. It's always wonderful. You see a hand right next to a thigh or something like that, and the light is hitting it, and you'll get this like intense reflection from skin onto skin. It's really interesting. Okay. I've basically already established my most neutral colors as well. My most neutral lightest light is this kind of grayish color right there. I want to keep this shoulder down here like kind of on the grayer side, not as bright, a little bit darker, especially with this here. I want to attract as much attention here as possible. That's where my most saturated colors will be. My lightest light will be, and also my highest contrast will be in there. Probably even sharpest edges are going to be there as well. And now we've established both of those. I'm not establishing hue because, everything is pretty simple here as far as hue. We got gray or warm or whatever. It's more temperature related than hue. Blue, red, yellow, that kind of thing. Orange for the subsurface scattering. Yes, 100%. Subsurface scattering. I love that effect on the skin. This is more reflected light. Like you can see subsurface scattering on the thumb a little bit. And yeah, you're right. That's like, it's like if I were to illustrate this, of course, you're not going to see it exactly, but what's happening on their hand is you get this light, and then the light penetrates the skin a little bit, comes back out orange. Yeah. On the face, it's more orange from a reflected light, I think, but you're totally right. Yeah, it is a fantastic effect on skin. Okay. Caucasian skin, at least, we have to be very specific on that because I've painted Black individuals before, and they have a whole other beauty and within those skin tones. I wish I need to move into some different skin tone colors with painting. I always pick Caucasian people all the time. Too many white people. Hello, Credu. Oh my gosh, something cartoons. I'm going to call you Cretouge. Cretu George cartoons? Okay, well, hello, Cretu George. Welcome. Please ask questions. I like to answer questions. Now that we have all of these ideas, these sliders, we got our extreme lightest and dark value, our extreme saturated and unsaturated colors established, let's go right into detail. And like I was saying at the very beginning, the problem with starting detailed on a painting is it's hard to hold it together. We'll start in a very detailed area, like in this hand that I'm going to do. And, I may fail completely on this. I may just fall on my face. I'm talking about all this, but it may not work out well at all. But we'll start detailed. We'll get super detailed in our focal point. Usually that's where we start. And then by the time we get the entire canvas filled up, or paper filled up with paint, we'll look back at where we started and go, wow, those colors are way off. Specifically, what am I saying about that? The value and the saturation is way off. The hue will probably get close because we know orange, red, yellow, blue, pretty close, right? The hue and saturation will be off, and we'll have to start redoing all those areas that we started with. But establishing our major value range from lightest to dark and our major saturation range will help us keep within where we need. I'm also working with a very limited palette, which is going to always help keep me where I need to go as well. That's the great thing about the Zorn palette. There's harmony there. There's a reason for why it was chosen. And Anders Zorn popularized it. It isn't like we didn't have those colors before Anders Zorn. It was just, he said, okay, I'm painting in these and I'm going to popularize it. And he made absolutely gorgeous paintings with it, right? So the first thing I'm going into here is I'm close to where I was working right away. I'm not going to start over here in the face or someplace else around there. If I'm going to start detailed, I'm going to start right next to where I established those major value ranges and saturation ranges. This way, I'm looking at the colors that I'm putting down, and I'm comparing against these little swatches that I put down with it. And as I move through this, I'm thinking about multiple things, okay? The first thing I think about is like, well, this color definitely needs to be less saturated than my most saturated orange that I put down. So I'm bringing it down with titanium white, ivory black. It's a little bit on the purple side, hue, so less saturation, purplish hue. What's the value? Definitely darker than the most saturated and the white. So darkened it down for that value, desaturated into more of a purple. And then I'm looking at the turn of this form on this finger specifically. And I'm happy with what I have down right here already. And then I'm also thinking about drawing, like all of this all in one. I want to turn that finger, this little detail that I'm working on, like I'm going right into detail. Like I'm working on white paper. That's the problem with white paper. A white surface or even a gray surface. Gray is a little bit easier to tell all of these color differences on. But until we've established the entirety of all the colors over the entire canvas, or at least the majority of it, are we going to really understand how close our value ranges, our saturation, our hues are within this painting. Why is that? Why is that a reason? And look, I'm going to do this too. See how that value is a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer? I'm comparing on my palette. I'm painting the painting on my palette before I put it on my canvas, right? Definitely don't want this hand to get anywhere near as dark as that color, because that's my background. That's the hair. So I'm compressing within that. I'm testing within that. Now, white is one of the hardest things to compare against. All these values are going to look darker. Okay. And I'm working in this kind of relative thing. I've established like relative ideas of value and saturation. So I have to continue that relative idea of how it's going to work throughout the painting. Relative as in it's only light or dark or saturated, and it only looks that way compared to what's next to it. It's hard on white or any other color because we have this super bright, desaturated white right next to everything we're working on. So this is going to look very dark comparatively. But I have to trust what I've set up initially. And I have to you're constantly thinking, what is the value? What's the saturation? What's the hue? Hue is kind of easier. I keep saying that it's easier because we normally, especially with a limited palette, we don't think about hue anymore. We're not thinking red, yellow, blue, and green. We're thinking warmer, cooler, warmer, cooler, warmer, cooler, and that way. So I know that this hue is, that I'm working on here with the fingers has a particular value. And I'm thinking, oh, it needs to go a little bit more gray or cooler. It needs to go a little bit more warmer into my red or a yellow, right? And this needs to go lighter and grayer right here. And we'll start getting this kind of patchwork of paint on our surface, okay? It's going to be very patchy at the beginning. And it's hard to understand what's going on with these patches at the beginning. You can see I'm like choking up on this brush like crazy because I'm working detailed at the beginning. This is why it's such a hard way to work. A lot of us like start out paintings like this all the time, just working within like a detailed way. And if we're not 100% cognizant of exactly what we're doing with everything we put down, it will fly off the rails really quickly. All of a sudden we got an incongruent color there. It could be in the wrong place. It's drawn incorrectly. We got bad edges. All this happens with every stroke. Hi, Andre. Are you using any medium? No, I don't like using medium. I like paint right out of the tube. There's, I think the majority of artists and people that had started out in oil painting feel, oh, well, if I'm painting in oil, I have to have a medium because so many teachers talk about mediums. Well, if you're going to paint in oil paint, you got to have that solvent. No solvents, no mediums. I just use safflower oil to clean out my brushes at the end, and that's it. But you don't need a medium to paint with oil paints. Like your pigments are already sustained in a medium already, a binder, which is a linseed oil. And you can buy brands that match the viscosity of paint that you like to paint with. And I like this kind of medium viscosity of paint from Winsor & Newton. And if you've ever painted with Winsor & Newton, nice, that's great to hear. Good. Hopefully I'm being helpful here. So Winsor & Newton brand, their student brand, the Winton, which I'm working with, and their artist brand, their pro brand, all have like the same viscosity to them, like a mid-range viscosity, which is nice. And I like that viscosity. Now I've painted on raw paper. I don't mind painting on raw paper. That's where you like really have to move the paint around because what happens is it soaks all the oil out of the paint and it kind of turns the paint into this kind of clay-like thing and you're almost sculpting while you're painting, right? And it is a different way of working, but you can't. One thing I was talking about on a course that I'm creating right now is we tend to judge paint in isolation. Like we'll get one brand of paint like Winsor & Newton Winton, and we say, oh, I hate this paint. And we won't consider everything else that goes into it because there is a connection between your brush that you're using, the paint that you're using, and the surface you're putting it on. So and what you prefer as well. Like if you've painted in oil before, or if you're painting in like acrylic or watercolor, and then you come to oil and you're expecting this like kind of washy thing to happen because you come from watercolor, you're going to be a little bit upset because it's different. If you want it super washy, then you're like, oh, okay, I need to add in a bunch of medium, definitely. But it also depends on what brush you're using and what surface you're on. Because if you're on a raw paper and you want something really washy, that's all going to get sucked in, and you're going to not have very long strokes, right? So always thinking about, what paintbrush am I using, what surface, what everything, whenever you're looking at paint. Like if you want a very fluid paint brand, I would suggest going with M. Graham. M. Graham, I have a whole set of them and I don't use them very much because they move around a lot easier. They have a much higher viscosity than Winsor & Newton does. Now, right away, this painting is looking very patchy in this hand, very patchy. Like nothing is like congealed together yet, right? Everything feels kind of like, I don't know what that is. There's just like a big question mark there. Like I'm seeing things that I see and I'm interpreting it. I say, oh, it's a little bit darker, a little bit grayer, right? And I put it down, but it's in this little small area. And I'm thinking about the edges, the value, the saturation, and the hue for the most part, mainly temperature. But I don't have, and when we're working in this way where it's detail first, this is what you run into, a lot of confusion. And you have to kind of trust the initial things that you put out. We established our lightest light. We established our darkest dark. We established our most saturated. We established our least saturated color. And we have the hues that we want. With the Zorn palette, these hues are going to be pretty close. It's a very harmonious palette. And only after we get pretty far, in these areas are we going to begin to understand where this is going. But we have to trust those initial things that we put on. So now I picked up a different brush, okay? Another brush because I'm going into a darker color. It's going to be a warmer color that I just destroyed with that yellow ochre. It's not what I want. It's okay, no worries. Got to make sure it's see, that's too dark. I don't want it darker than my darkest dark that I've already established. And I don't know why I kept pulling out the black there as I was saying that. So what I'm going for here is I'm going to put in some of this dark area next to the hand where the hair is. It's going to be the same value as the background. Look at that. Same value, but warmer. Okay. And I can put it right next to the background that I put there. Do you see that? It looks so much lighter on my palette, doesn't it? It's because the relative comparison against the white. We have to always think about that relative comparison. It's exactly what I was talking about with a paint brand versus, the brush you're working on and the surface. What that paint feels like is relative to the other things you're working on with it. Rada Bagata says, I use watercolor and the composition of the paper is essential. Yes, especially with watercolor. I was talking with a friend of mine. We're at Life Drawing and we're chatting about materials for oil paint, because there was another oil painter in there. And there was also a really good watercolorist who've been doing watercolor for years. And we're talking about, and by the way, as soon as I put that dark in there, it gave me a deeper understanding of this whole area. I need to simplify that a bit more. So funny, like you add on a certain note, you fill up you get rid of that white, you get closer to what you want, and it tells you everything about what you've just done. But we were talking, and the other oil painter was like, yeah, almost any surface, no big deal. Almost any paint, no big deal, right? And then the watercolors, they say, yeah, it really matters a lot on watercolor. I've never worked in watercolor. I'm scared of watercolor. It's opposite. in a lot of ways of oil paint. So I don't know. Considering the various elements such as pigment, support, etc., painting is like conducting an orchestra. Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. And like, I like looking at color, thinking about color, kind of like photography. And it's really interesting how similar they are, because in photography, you have three things. You have shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. Three things. With color, you have hue, saturation, and value being most important. And there's an infinite amount of expression that can come from just those three things: hue, saturation, and value, or shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. And you're always kind of just juggling those three. And not only is it amazingly simple, just three things, but can also be amazingly complex all at the same time, which is super interesting. Just love that. Like, look how simple yet amazingly complex some, master paintings are. You look at a Rembrandt portrait and you go, I can see every single brushstroke delineated perfectly in this Rembrandt painting, but I still don't understand how it comes together and makes something so complex. Here's an artist that painted over 400 years ago, and most artists today are still trying to achieve what he achieved back then. It's crazy. 400 years, and there still hasn't been anyone, this is subjective, as great as Rembrandt, right? No one has been able to paint like him. And all master artists that are just amazing right now, you'll ask them, and maybe some of them would say, in a very pretentious way, oh yeah, I'm better than Rembrandt, or I can paint as good as Rembrandt. I don't know. Not sure about that. It's so amazing. We can see all that simplicity. The simplicity is there, but there's also infinity within the same simplicity. So I'm being very careful here around, and we're talking about drawing now. When you're painting, you're drawing at the same time. Always remember that. Drawing and painting will never be separated. You have to be careful around the lighter areas here, because I want to save the white of those fingers, it's getting hit by direct light, for transparency on the paper. That's where I'm going to get that glow from. What's also great about oil paint that I love, and you see all of this kind of craziness of color that I put in here. As soon as I put this dark color there, it really showed how broken this is and how I need to kind of like bring that together in one cohesive thing. This is where squinting is super important. I'm looking really closely at my reference. Let me bring it over, because I'm working from my iPad, and I'm looking at this probably on that level. And even looking at it in the camera, when I'm looking at the stream, everything, I don't see like the cooler, the warmer, and, it really kind of compresses everything down. But when we look that exact on things, when we're looking so deeply, not only physically does our pupils kind of dilate open, and we begin to see so much more in those shadows and those darker areas, and we see the subtle blues and subtle oranges and subtle yellow changes. All of this opens up, and it's like gorgeous how much information's in there. But then we pull back on our painting, we step back in our painting, we're way back here, and we go, oh my God, it's just a mess. It's a mess. Where we need to also think about wholeness and simplicity. And yes, we can have those subtleties there, but they need to speak about the whole of this hand first, okay? And then those subtleties need to shine on their own, but not overshine the entirety of that form. And this is 100% subjective to how I paint right now at this moment. Because if you look at someone like Anne Gale, Gale, if you're on your computer, your phone, please go look at Anne Gale's paintings right now. You'll see the tremendous amount of like broken color that's opposite of what exactly I just said. And they're beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous, So anything that I say is in relation, relative, right? Everything's relative. Thank you, Einstein. It's in relation to how I'm working and the thing that I'm doing right now. If you have any teacher, any other artist that tells you, hey, no, you have to paint it this way, this is the way you have to paint, they are wrong. And there's going to be tons of master artists out there that are in museums that have taught us differently and have said, you know what? They said you had to paint this way. Well, I painted exactly opposite, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. Same impression with Giovanni Boldini and John Singer Sargent. Yes, you can see the brushwork and all seems simple, but not on Boldini especially. Man, painted these little small paintings and they looked huge, that's just amazing. Crazy brushwork with Boldini, more abstraction, I think, than and action more than anything. Kind of took, the impetus from Sargent and just said, you know what? Let's dial this up a notch. Let's just have these really beautiful, crazy long brush strokes just flowing out from these figures. Gorgeous. And Sargent being very controlled. Hear people talk about how Sargent painted, or anecdotal information about Sargent, how oh yeah, that painted that head 26 times, because trying to get every single brush stroke to look perfect on that first flick of the brush, and it just wasn't working. So scraped it out, did it again, scraped it out, did it again, scraped it out, did it again. Yeah. I love the simplicity of, how he was taught by Carlos Duran. Carlos Duran told him, if it's, this is paraphrasing. I don't know the exact quote. I don't know if anybody does, but if it's not, what is the quote? If it's indispensable, it's unnecessary. No, if it's not indispensable, it's unnecessary. Meaning that if you can remove it and the painting's still fine without it, then it needs to be removed. If you remove it and the painting falls apart, then it's, mostly it's super essential. And that'll get you to paint simply within everything that you do. Just thinking less. What can I pull away? Where is the essentials of this painting? What am I trying to say? Where is the focal point? Where is the story? And then focusing on that story, and not trying to add in a bunch of stuff just for bravado or making it interesting in some way. But and that's some of the hardest painting to ever do, to say so much with so little. And it's just like poetry, right? I love connecting art with poetry. Hey, Slipknot fan, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, I love connecting painting art with poetry. I prefer the poetic idea of art itself, where if I could say as much as I can with as little as possible and keep erasing and keep pulling out, detail and saying, no, it still works. It still holds its own even without that. I don't need this. I don't need that. And getting to the severe essence of the story that you're trying to tell. Just fantastic. I think that's, my favorite way to paint. But, I also look at a lot of artists, I can't think of any names right now, that don't think about this kind of minimalist approach to painting. They think about a maximalist approach, which is a really cool term that I heard recently, like maximalist. I saw this comic book artist, I can't remember their name, but it was just like a cacophony of just amazing stuff, going on just one panel of this beautiful comic book. It was so much, you could look at the one thing, that one panel for a week and a half and still find more stuff and more stuff and more stuff with it. And it was so interesting. I can love that and still say, I'm not painting that way. It's not me. not how I want to do things, but love how they do it. Yeah. Be interested in it. Okay, it's starting to come together. There's a patience that's involved with hey, I'm glad you're doing okay. Slipknot fan. There's a patience that's involved with detailed work. Working in a detailed way first versus establishing like a block in and then going to detail. And like I said at the very beginning of this stream, which I like repeating things because I understand people come in later. Totally cool. No worries. Like I established at the beginning of the stream, I usually paint like with big block in first to establish all that and then kind of sneak up on the details as I go, right? But then sometimes you get this feeling of like, I just feel like relaxing, putting on some, music in the background, and just getting into that intense focus of working detailed first. And it does take intense focus. Working this way, if you're not paying attention throughout, and the only way I'm able to do this is because I can talk anybody's head off while working. I've been doing it for years. Is the only way that we can do this and keep it held together is by having that focus. Now, here's a good area. As I look at that little tiny reference up there, and I'm looking at the shadow area. So there's a whole neck down in there. There's the transition from a trapezoid into this like pit of like where the neck flows into, like there's a trapezoid, then you got a pit, and then the clavicle kind of comes out a bit and then down into the chest. And there's all that detail that I can see looking at my reference. But when I squint down, you close your eyes just a little bit so that your eyelashes kind of come together like this, and it darkens everything up. You see values better. That turns into just one warm gray kind of area. It is desaturated. It's shadow. We got a warmish light, right? So our shadows are going to be cool. That's not a rule. Doesn't happen all the time. And so this is going to turn into more of an area that doesn't have a lot of that information in it. One thing that I love talking about and expressing to artists is this idea of putting all of your fundamentals of art on a slider. And actually, I was calling it a spectrum before, but I am in the Nicholas Uribe Patreon group, and I love his Patreon, and he talks about it like sliders, like on Photoshop. But the spectrum thing, I think, works just as well. That's a bit too thin. I'm getting kind of warm in there. It's too warm. More paint. So like I put value on a spectrum here, right? So super saturated on one side, super light on one side, super dark on the other side, saturation on a spectrum, super saturated on one side, super neutral on the other side. And now when you're telling a story about, within your painting, and every painting you do, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Story. I don't know what you're talking about. You're saying something. It's there for you to speak to the people that are looking at it, right? We create paintings in order to say something. Hey, Chris, welcome. Hi. So we're always creating to say something. And that's the reason why we're painting. It isn't like, obviously we can make paintings just to paint, just to have fun. And that's totally cool too. But when you think about like the viewer, like comes into this painting, you want to lead them through. It's like, I like thinking about the viewer coming to me, like I'm talking to them through this painting. And they say something like, hey, you brought me here. You put this painting up on the wall. You put it up on your website. You brought me here to look at it. Now, what are you trying to say? What are you leading me to? Why am I here? And if you have this painting that's just kind of, all over the place, right? It doesn't have any clear intention to it. You're not saying anything specific. The viewers are going to be lost too. They're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to look at. I mean, there's detail everywhere. What am I supposed to look at? Why am I here? Right. And before I was like, well, I don't know how to speak in paint, in value, in color. I don't know how to direct within composition. Composition, we focus more on the placement of objects, but composition can be affected by these fundamentals of painting. Fundamentals as in value, color, saturation, edges, these kind of things. And if we think about, or if we start our painting with what we love about it, and we start thinking about, and every painting I start, I write down why I'm doing it, what's going to be the focal point, and what I want to say within this painting. I think that's so important because that will establish what you love about it. For me, it's this hand within that super saturated like oranges that happen because the light is hitting that hand. The super bright fingers there, the reflected light of that orange, like that's my central area. And that's like the crescendo of this story that I'm talking about. Is it specific? Am I saying something like, is it like a comic book story or something? No, it's more subtle than that. It's more poetic than that. It's like, look at the beauty within the coloration here and how that changes throughout this hand. And it goes from super orange to gray everywhere else. It's not about the look on their face anymore. That'll go back into the background. It's more about those colorations. That's the story that I'm going to tell. But when I establish that at the beginning, it gives direction for everything else in the painting. It gives direction for how I'm going to do the values, where the lightest light is going to be, where the darkest darks are going to be, where the highest contrast is going to be between both of them, where the most saturation is going to be, where the hardest edges are going to be. So if I think about it in that way, and I put each of these fundamentals on a spectrum, and within that spectrum, for example, saturation, like our most saturated colors, like on one side of the spectrum, are going to attract the most attention. On the other side of that spectrum, there's grays and things like that. Those don't attract much attention. So if I want you to look in this certain area, that's where I'm going to make sure the most saturated colors are, right? So this is how we tell a story through that particular fundamental. We put it on a spectrum, and we decide on what end attracts most attention and what end doesn't. You do the same thing with contrast within value. Sharp edges attract the most attention. Soft edges don't attract any attention. Lost edges don't attract any attention. And so we're telling a story through that. Thick paint attracts more attention. Texture attracts more attention, And then those aren't rules. Like people can break those rules tremendously, turn them upside down. The whole painting could be super bright and saturated, and this one gray area is where all the attention is, because it's, all about the majority is one thing, and then the small bit is something else. And we always see the difference, the big difference. Have you ever tried doing buon fresco? No. I don't even know what that is. I know what fresco is, but a buon fresco, no. My understanding of anything like that, painting on a wall with wet plaster, yeah. Definitely not going to teach anybody about that or talk about it a lot because I have no idea. My limited knowledge of fresco is this. Leonardo da Vinci did it wrong with The Last Supper, and now it's almost gone. Yeah, that's how much I know about fresco. Done. Why do you ask that question? It's a kind of like an off and left field question. I'm guessing maybe you do frescoes, and that would be interesting. Buon fresco equals true fresco. Just means with wet plaster. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Because, and that was the problem with Da Vinci's Last Supper is he didn't paint directly. Well, two things. He didn't paint directly on wet plaster. He let it dry when he wasn't supposed to, and he didn't know that you can't put oil based paint over like a water based paint, and so he was doing that back and forth. And within like 5 to 10 years, I think it started falling off the wall. Yeah, that wasn't so good on his part, but still amazing. We still love him, even though he didn't do that. What kind of paper are you using? Moleskine? No, this is the brand is called Fluid, Fluid. It's 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. Hot press because it's super smooth and I paint small. This is 6x9 that I'm painting, and I want to be able to get the detail. I don't want any texture to override these those little hairs on the paint strokes. I want that to be the important aspect of this. Everything I do, how the paint lays on rather than seeing the texture of like a canvas. I painted on canvas for years, and I got to a point where I was like doing 4 or 5 coats of gesso and sanding, and it was just a pain in the butt to prepare. So now it's 140-pound, and I'd like to get 300-pound watercolor paper. It would not bow a little bit like this once I put the PVA sizing on it. And that's the other thing is I size this paper with PVA size by Gamblin. Okay, this finger, and then there's a grayish shadow. I need to focus on here. So there's a grayish shadow that kind of has a really interesting drawing to it. It goes this way, but I need it lighter. I need to make sure I never get close to that darkest dark within this hand. And I think I'm getting too close. Got to focus on that. Focus on the value first. Value is most important. There we go. That's better. Brought it back. Still getting a little too detailed in there. I can bring it together. It's a great thing about oil paint is it moves around a lot. Just means when in plaster fresco secco equals a fresco with dry plaster. Oh, okay. I guess with like modern paints and things like that, you can do, a fresco secco or just like a mural, I guess, right? Just outside or on your basic wall, you'd be called like a mural. I kind of like the cool name, the Italian name there better though. It sounds more important. But that's interesting. Oh, the fresco secco usually peel. I could see that, especially being outside and in the weather or whatever. Yeah, definitely going to peel off. Yeah, I don't even know what kind of paint you would use for a fresco. I have no idea. Has to be something different. I know where I live in Pueblo, Colorado, they have this levee thing where they do murals on the levee, and they use a very particular paint because it's all concrete, painting on concrete to keep it from peeling to stay for a long time. But, anything like that that's going to be hit by the sun and all the weather is going to change over time. I think we get a little bit too caught up and I want to see it exactly the way it is for, 600 years. I don't worry too much about archival stuff when I paint. That's why I'm okay with paper and quote unquote student grade oil paints, things like that. I don't worry about fat overlean. I've never had a problem with it. And I'm totally okay with these paintings changing over time. And I've seen so many artists look at the history of so many artists out there that have painted on really terrible substrates and done the worst things ever. And yet their paintings are still here today and doing just fine. Toulouse-Lautrec would paint on cardboard. Olga Boznanska, cardboard, directly on cardboard. My favorite is Alphonse Mucha, M-U-C-H-A, or no, is it Mucha? No, it's Munch. Forget his first name. The guy that did the Scream, and I think you know who I'm talking about there. He was so funny, painted directly on wood. No priming of the wood, just directly on wood, and then would leave his paintings outside. I've seen pictures of his paintings in like 2 foot of snow. It's like there was some kind of comment from him saying that if his paintings can't survive the weather, then they're not meant to be. You know, it's like, wow, okay. Are they fine today? Yeah, they're perfectly fine. Another anecdotal piece of information. Do you know the Scream? If you know that painting, there's 26 of them out there. He did this whole, like, I don't know, there's like 10 or 15 paintings or something like that. And it would have told a story, and the Scream was part of that story. But everybody loved the Scream. So people would come into his gallery or his studio and say, hey, can I buy that painting? And he would say, yes, sure, here, buy it, take it. And then he would paint another one and put it up in its place. So there's like 26 different Screams out there. Like, yes, you can do that. You can do that. Doesn't have to be, you know, this perfect thing that only one exists. Paint the same painting 50 times. I was reading about fresco after a lady tried to restore a famous fresco secco in her church. She did such a bad job of it, it was unrecognizable afterwards, but ended up becoming a tourist attraction. Oh, wow. Rada Bagata, you're from Italy. Oh, fantastic. I worked with a guy from Italy, the job that I had doing web development. His name was Andrea. We called him Andy. Fantastic person. I love the way he would speak. He would add like the higher A at the end of every word. I would do this, and we need to go to there. And he would give tutorials to some of our customers, and I would be part of that. And if there were any women listening, most of them would say, oh, you can just talk to me all day long. I tell you what, those Italian accents, almost any accent, you come over to American, people just love to hear you talk. 100%. Yeah. Yep. I've never been to Italy, though. I would love to go. The amount of just historical awe that you have there, just, I can't imagine having that, you know, so close and so readily available. It's got to be amazing. Hopefully you've gone to many of those amazing museums. And I wonder if it would be detrimental to like how you progress as an artist too, because you're right next to all of these amazing artists, right? From thousands of years ago, probably. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And like, that's the standard. And you're like, oh my God, my paintings suck. It was originally a portrait. Oh, I saw that original portrait of Jesus where they redid it. Oh, it was so bad. So bad. Unfortunate. Oh yeah, the Scream is by Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. Thank you. 1893. Thank you. Your English is the same? Fantastic. Yes. Start up a YouTube channel and just talk to people. They'll love you. Go to Florence. Oh, I would love Florence. One day. One day. It's on the bucket list, right? We're going to have to do that someday. Hey, this is starting to come together somewhat. You can kind of see what's going on, right? Getting to the point where I'm working, you know, and you can see here's where I started in all those oranges, establishing my darkest dark, my lightest light, my most saturated thing. Actually, my lightest light is going to be the paper, so I'm leaving that. But as I build up more and more and more, and I'm going in this kind of circular fashion, right? Out from here, out from my focal point. I'm not going to like all of a sudden go to this background over here or the nose or the face. No, I'll work my way over there. It's like you're building a puzzle. You're starting here. I'm going to illustrate this on my palette. Like you're starting at point A and you say, okay, that stroke is right. And then you're like, okay, well, there's another form next to it. And then you say there's another form next to that, and another form next to that, and then next to that. And throughout all those strokes, we're comparing constantly with the value, the saturation, everything, and what it's next to. We're getting those relative comparisons as we're building this puzzle when we work detailed to big, right? When we start with detail first. And it is complex. This is why a lot of artists don't do it. Why a lot of teachers say, no, you start big block in first and then work into detail. Get the bigger idea established. Because this is hard. This is very hard to do. To keep it together throughout the whole painting with, and end up with a painting that doesn't look completely incongruent with everything else. Yeah, tough to do. Richard Schmid, perfect artist to look at for working in this way. This is how he worked all the time. All about detail first and building puzzle pieces. He would kind of block in some areas, kind of like I did here, moving out and then maybe detail that out a little bit. But for the most part, it was like building those puzzle pieces. I've done this with, you can go to my website, chrisbevan.com, and then look at like some of the last paintings I did in my gallery. They're like back in 2016. And I worked that way a lot, where it was very detailed, some very small brush at the beginning, super detailed figurative paintings, right? Okay, I got a lot of comments here. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. Hey, Christian. Or Krista, sorry. Welcome. And there's Doobie the Cat again. Hi. I've been once, my wife multiple times. Our friends go every year. Would love to go back. Oh, envious. So envious from you guys. My goodness. I have been places, though. I'm happy with the places that I have been. I have been to Paris. I've gone to the Louvre, had to rush through it. We only had so much time. I've gone to the Musée d'Orsay. I've gone there. I love the Musée d'Orsay. It's beautiful. Impressionists, tons of Monet. The Louvre, I loved looking at Caravaggio, the Wrath of Medusa by Jericho, the Coronation of Napoleon, all the Caravaggio paintings that they have, just absolutely amazing. And then ignored the Mona Lisa by by Da Vinci. Still can't believe it to this day. Like everybody's crowded around the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci. They passed up the Death of the Virgin by Caravaggio. Here's a person that changed art. Like there would be no Rembrandt without Caravaggio. There'd be no Velázquez without Caravaggio. Here's a person that changed the face of art with these paintings, and people are like, Mona Lisa. It's not really that. It's not a great painting. It's great, but it's not as great as other paintings. Of course, could I paint a Mona Lisa? Hell no. But this is my opinion. Okay, sorry everybody in France, for my opinion, but I think the Mona Lisa was advertised very well to get the Louvre, especially when it was stolen, and that's what really brought in, all of its fame. Oh, it was stolen. It's worth all this money. It's behind like 5 panes of glass, and it's like this little tiny painting. Not that makes it bad. I mean, I paint small. Vermeer is small, and small paintings can change lives, right? Can change the course of art in general with a little tiny painting. But Caravaggio definitely over Mona Lisa, in my opinion. Could be a very dumb opinion, but it's mine. What else we got on here? The National Gallery of London is wonderful. Yes, been there. I have been there. Got to see, Odalisque by Velázquez and some Vermeers. Oof, And then right next to the National Gallery of London is the National Portrait Gallery. You want to go see some Sargents, get up close to a Sargent. Oof. Some of the best Sargent portraits. I mean, these are the places, guys. Like, if you love artwork, like, they are kind of like our mecca, right? That we have to try and get to in our lifetimes. It's so important. I mean, these are things that will just punch you in the gut. Like, you see these paintings in person. Reproductions just never do it. They never hold up. You got to see it in person. You can see it in person, and your life can change. It could just be like, oh, I was this artist before I saw this painting. Now I'm this artist. You know, just change everything. A good example, Nicholas Uribe, I'm in his Patreon. He was talking about, oh, yeah, and it's free. Oh my God. Like, the National Gallery, Washington, D.C. is really good. I like that gallery. I'll talk about that after this story, but I'm in the Patreon for Nicholas Uribe. I love Nicholas Uribe, Uribe. Go look at his work. Join his Patreon. Amazing, amazing. And he was talking about going to Poland for a particular painting. Like, he was wanting to see a particular painting. This is a person that like travels for months to look at paintings, like a particular painting. I want to see this particular painting. It's amazing. And eventually, well, he got to the place in Poland where the painting he was looking at, and he came across Olga Boznaska. Boznaska, I think. And he was like, my life changed after seeing Olga's work. And I have never seen Olga Boznanska's work either. But then I was like, oh, let me look up Olga Boznanska. And then I saw her paintings. And, you know, you may feel completely different when you see her paintings, but please look them up. Look at the hands of her paintings. You know, the only way I can describe the way I felt about seeing the way she does hands is very similar to how I feel when I see a sculpture by Bernini. Like, I can look at painting, I can look at even a Rembrandt and go, okay, I can kind of understand, you know, I can see every brushstroke that Rembrandt put down, and I can understand what he was trying to do. Because I can see every brushstroke there. I can go, okay, that stroke used a particular medium. It went in this direction with that value and that hue and saturation, blah, 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 blah. I can pull it apart and understand it because I've done it. But when I look at Bernini and I see like there's, I forget which one it is, where like this, you know, Greek god is holding this woman up in the air, and his hand is like pressed into her thigh, and it ceased to be marble, and it's a hand pressed into a thigh, and it feels soft. It feels like if you touched that person's thigh, that it would give, and just so beautiful. So amazing that when I looked at it, I was like, I have no idea. Like, I could go through my lifetime plus 10 more lifetimes and still not understand how that was achieved, right? That's the exact same way I felt when I look at the hands done by Olga Boznanska. I don't understand it. They are both representational and abstract, expressive and controlled, all at the same time. All at the same time. There's so much into those hands. And it was wonderful listening to Nicholas talk about how you would probably achieve something like that, or guessing at how you would achieve something like that. And that's his words, right? I like that coloration in there. I got a little bit of some of the paper showing through here. See how it's thin? I got some of that reflected light from the paper. Il Rapimento si Daphne. I don't know how to say in English? Repimento. See Daphne. Is that the name of one of the sculptures by Bernini that I'm talking about? Because Daphne sounds familiar. Like that's one of the Greek goddesses or something. But Olga Boznanska's hands, I still look at them and like, man, I would absolutely love to be able to understand how she was able to paint those hands like that. I mean, it's such expressiveness. Like, you get that expressiveness with John Singer Sargent and Sorolla and some Velasquez, right? Where there's a bit of expressiveness, especially Sorolla and John Singer Sargent. Boldini, definitely. We just talked about Boldini. Very expressive brushwork, but the brushwork is in and of itself. Like you can see each individual kind of brushstroke, but with those hands by Olga Boznanska, the brush is there, but also goes away at the same time. It's expressive, yet not understandable. I can't explain it. Trying to explain it, I have no idea. Nicholas Uribe tried to explain it as if holding on to this kind of glob of nothing as you're painting for as long as you can, as many strokes as you can put down to keep it looking nebulous, and then finally giving in and eventually at a moment and putting in just a few strokes that would bring all of that nebulous brushwork together into something that would say, I'm a hand. And that's what she's done. Just blows my mind. Just absolutely beautiful. I need more gray in this face. This face needs to be more gray. Black and white. Make a nice warm gray. Maybe even lighter. And even lighter than that. What am I? Okay, yeah. Definitely. So I'm working into this face now, and you can see I'm carefully moving away from that central point, my focal point that I have, always checking what I put down, and I'm going to put something next to it and check how it compares to what I put next to it. Puzzle pieces, putting the puzzle piece in. Like very seldom when we build a puzzle do we start in one area. Usually we start on the edge, right? We put in the edges. But then we'll start at one place, like from those edges, and move out from there. It'll kind of grow from that point, and that's what we're doing. We never just like go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to start in this like random middle of nowhere area. No, because it's what you put down that's going to inform the next thing that you put down. And it's important that when I'm talking about this, that you know that this is a particular way of painting that I don't always do, and that's why I'm talking about it today. I wanted to try and illustrate this as much as I can, of working detailed to like big, broad from there. But it's one way of working. Usually I work, big block ends first to kind of get the big ideas of the painting down, and then I work into detail after that. So I'm turning it all on its head. So hopefully I can illustrate the possibilities within it. And almost everything I'm putting down, value first, hue second, which is mostly temperature, and then saturation. So that'd be the next thing I'm thinking about. And then drawing as well. Like, am I putting the stroke down in the right place? And then also edges, like all of that I'm thinking about with every little movement that I'm making through this painting. And it's extremely referential, referencing my reference that I have, using that very closely to try and give me this understanding of where I need to go next. Oh yeah, Daphne turned into a tree or something. Yeah, like Zeus said, okay, well, I'm going to put She said, "Hey, get me away from this guy that's chasing me. I don't like him. I don't want to love, I don't love this guy. He's still chasing me." And Zeus was like, "Okay, I'll help you out. I'll just turn you into a tree." What a jerk, right? What Zeus was always a jerk. But that sculpture, that friggin' sculpture, man, just breaks my mind. I think it was that one and another one. The one I'm talking about with the hand and the thigh is actually a different sculpture, maybe, but because the guy is holding the girl up in the air, or the woman up in the air. But anything by Bernini, right? I mean, come on, it's gonna be amazing. Jerk Zeus. Rada Bagata, I was wrong. It's simply Apollo and Daphne by Bernini. Yes, Apollo and Daphne. Oh. There's anything like, I don't know if you guys feel that, but you see these things and it is just like a punch in the gut. It's, oh my gosh. I like sounds escape my mouth when I see certain things. And it's usually, something like that. Like when I see certain works that just are so good, just, I can't understand it. Just, oh my gosh, so amazing. Hopefully you feel that too. I think it would be wonderful if everybody on the planet would look at artwork and feel that same thing. But a lot of people don't, and that's okay. Whatever. But I feel it. That's why I start up these streams and I want to talk about it, because I want to try and express a lot of what I'm doing through these streams. And because I talk too much all the time, and this is a perfect outlet for it. And I love answering your questions too. Apollo and Daphne. If you haven't looked at Apollo and Daphne by Bernini, please look at it. Even online, it's still wonderful. Yeah. Today I'm struggling with a baby hand. You're painting a baby's hand. Hands in general, and then all of a sudden you got this little cherub's hand that is like, fatty in some places, different, it's like this big blob. And you're like, how am I supposed to describe this blobby thing? Yeah. And not only that, like young people, young women, or female looking individuals, kids have such many people have very smooth skin, not a lot going on, right? Not a lot of creases, or like on my hands, you look and you see all kinds of, like, you make a fist and it's like purples and oranges and greens and all kinds of veins and bones and tendons, and there's tons of stuff to grab onto there. But you look at certain people that have very smooth skin everywhere. They're young and they don't have, anything going on, just beautiful skin, or maybe they have just a crap ton of makeup on. And it's just the subtle transition of color. So subtle in places. And you get any of that subtlety off and the value or the saturation, and you're like, it doesn't even look like a finger anymore. It's so subtle. It's the hardest thing. It's easier to paint older people, draw older people that have all that interest and crazy, like the history within their body is there, and their hands and their skin and everything. There's so much more to grab onto. You can see definite transitions, and it's a lot easier. Darker. I'm going to go a bit into the background here with right in front of the face, because I'm going to start getting close to this side of the face, and I'm too far away from my background color that's here to make a really close comparison. So I'm going to establish some of this here first beforehand. I'm going to make sure it's close to what I have over here, definitely. Okay, today I'm struggling with a baby hand. I thought the Scream movie Mask Ghostface was based on Edvard Munch's painting, but it turns out it was already a mask as part of the Halloween costume set. But I think director Wes Craven added Munch's painting to it, to the lore of Ghostface. Oh, that's cool. Huh. Yeah, you can kind of see the similarities between it. When I think about Edvard Munch's painting The Scream, and I know the black and white mask you're talking about, Uh, that's pretty interesting. I had no idea. I wonder if it'd been as scary as if it had as saturated colors as Edvard's painting. Probably not. I mean, we associate these super bright colors with happy stuff. But then you think about it from Stephen King, the clown. I mean, white with really bright red, right? And that's scary. But clowns in general are just kind of scary sometimes. Sometimes. Random. I love the random conversations that come in. It's fantastic. Okay. So, what are you doing here, Chris? My friend Pam always says, get back to topic, Chris. Tell me what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I'm like, yes, you're right. Need to get back on topic. So, I love where this white is here and this super saturation. Still has a lot of work to go into it. Okay, it's there. We got an idea of what's happening. There's some thin paint down. That's fine. I definitely will go back into it, but I'm working out from it. And then this face, it's warm here, all in the face. It gets darker. The value changes in a lot of places. But it's more gray than anything else. Right. And I want to push that because the one thing, the number one thing that attracts attention when humans look at it, I don't know why I said humans. I have no idea what animals think when they look at stuff, but faces. You can have the most crazy painting with just a cacophonous amount of information in. But the one face will stand out to everybody that looks at it. Oh, look at that face, right? And we can use that as a compositional element. But if I'm doing a painting where my focal point is not the face, I need to make sure that I use the fundamentals that we all know, to make sure that it has less interest than my focal point. So I'm going to desaturate it. I'm going to keep it away from these saturated colors, really far away. So I'll get into these grays and things like that because grays attract less attention. I'm going to keep all the edges pretty soft. I don't want soft edges. I'm going to keep the contrast really low. So there's going to be a light here on this nose. I do like that. But everything in between that nose and here is going to be as gray and kind of less attractive, not attractive. Attract as less attention as possible. Definitely. And that's hard, especially when faces are what attract most attention. So I really have to push those fundamentals to do that. I have to be very careful with the value that is happening within the nostril here and with what's surrounding it. Because if I make that nostril dark, and then the values surrounding it too light, it's going to be higher contrast. It's going to attract too much attention. Oof, probably a little bit lighter than that. Yeah. And now I could even go into some ivory black with a bit more yellow ochre to get into some greenish colors. It's like a greenish gray more than anything. So it's a warm gray, but that will help keep things on that warmer side in some places, not all places, and keep it from attracting too much attention. Because the warmth here is more of a red warmth, more orange. If I go into like a burnt umber, like a darker orange here, there's still like a connection between those two, that kind of orange color, the red and yellow together. And I want to disconnect everything with this face that would bring it close to my focal point. I want that disconnection. I don't want you to look at the face too much. Push it back there. So second painting that I've been doing, the last painting, actually the third painting in a row, that featured a portrait on it, but the portrait was not the the focus. Definitely not the focus. You can check out the previous streams on that if you want. And just slowly moving through it. That's the hard thing about streaming with oil painting, you know? That's why whenever you see oil paintings done by anybody on YouTube, you know, the painting process is sped up. You got a time lapse for it because it takes a lot of patience. I mean, when I'm sitting here doing it, it's exciting. It's crazy, you know? I think it's super exciting. But watching it, I mean, even when I watch people paint, I'm like, okay, where's the fast forward button? What's going on here? And I feel like the only thing that makes this a little bit interesting is me talking about everything that I'm doing. You know, all of this anecdotal information and chatting that's happening in between really helps it out. I mean, it's another reason why you look at Twitch. I'm actually streaming on Twitch again. I finally got unbanned. That's the problem. Like you show some reference images that have, you know, hidden nudity on it, you still get banned. Have you done any pencil or charcoal portraits, Chris? Yes. Yeah, check them out on my website. I was doing this whole like set of portraits and things. I did like a total of 20 something portraits with charcoal and graphite. And they were for a book that my wife was writing, my partner was writing. And they were really fun. And I spent like, I don't know, 6 months to a year on a whole bunch of them. I did a lot of like famous fandom things. Like I did Snape from Harry Potter. I did a really good one, very detailed, super detailed portraits on a lot of these. I did Yoda from Star Wars, of course. Spock. I did a bunch of different ones. I did my own portrait, which is probably my favorite portrait I've ever done. And a lot of them are gone, not sold because I couldn't really sell without getting in trouble on those fandom type things. The book didn't really work out because it was using nothing but like famous names and imagery. So, and there was a lot of rights involved in that. And we were like, okay, no, we're not going to do this. But yeah, I did a ton of those portraits, and it was great to focus on just drawing for a extended period of time, to just really get into it and say, okay, this is going to be just drawing, you know, me rendering in black and white, rendering it as exact as I can in black and white, which is so amazing because that's all you need to express in some very profound ways. Very simple piece of paper, very simple graphite pencil or stick of charcoal can make beauty. Something that people will look at and just go, "Oh my gosh, my life has changed." You know, I didn't think that. I thought one way before then and a different way after seeing it. So simple. And I think it's one of the reasons why I'm a better painter is because I focus on drawing a lot. I think it's the big separator between, you know, a level of artist that goes from, you know, what's a better word for mediocre, you know, kind of, you know, run of the mill to like the next level. And it's all about draftsmanship skills. Yeah, I think the white masks are more vivid. For example, Michael Myers or Jason yeah, I could see those. Those are all scary. I always struggle with portraits. I can never get the proportions right. I need to practice more. It's good. I'm glad that you added on into that sentence, this idea of that it wasn't that you don't have this innate talent, that it's just based in practice, which it is. That's all it is just setting up a practice where you get a constant feedback on what you've done right and what you can, you know, improve upon. I like using the word yet at the end of all this. You know, I'm not good at portraits yet, you know, because there's a bit of openness there. There's a bit of, I just need to work on it. There's a bit of hope. that I think is super, super important. I always struggle with portraits. I can never get the proportions right. That's yeah. My past 3 streams was this painting, me working on the drawing and having a lot of problems with it. If you haven't looked at those previous streams, I would totally ask you to go and just watch some of those videos, Slipknot, because I go through on Photoshop how to take the drawing that you've made and get objective feedback on what is correct and what is incorrect. You can do something like that with gridding as well to get, objective feedback, but that objective feedback is so important. And objective is the important word for that, because we can lean upon like a person like myself that can, because over the years I'm able to see what's off, and what's on, like in comparison of distances and things like that, because that's all it is. Compare, exact distances of lines and shapes, and then exact angles and things like that is what makes proportions work or not work. But when we lean on other people to tell us what is right and what is not right, it is still a subjective idea. Like, I think this portrait is wrong because the nose is a little bit too big in this way, right? Or this line is off. It needs to go over to this side or something like that. But we can use digital means to get a very objective response to our art, and it will tell us right away, oh, this line is off by this much. And that is so important because we can get this objective feedback on our drawings that we're doing and then improve from there. That feedback is so important. If we just sat and just drew forever and didn't even look at our drawings in this kind of scholarly way and faced like the issues that we have and said, oh, okay, I was wrong here, or I was inaccurate here, and here, and this is why. If we don't do that, we could draw forever and never improve. It's all about getting that very objective feedback and then acting upon it. That's how you want to improve super fast, is you get feedback and you create just a really quick feedback loop. The quicker you can learn where your faults are and then improve upon that is super important. Another reason why I paint small, you iterate through things really quickly, But yeah, proportions, hands and faces, you will struggle with. We all struggle with for the entirety of our journey as artists. All the artists that I know that I've watched paint and do and commented on or whatever, that are 10 times better than me, they all say the same thing. Yeah, it's a struggle. It's always, one day, you do like 5 or 10 paintings and you feel like you're on top of the world, or drawings or whatever. You're like, man, my drawing has never been as good as this. And then one drawing or painting comes along and you think, I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I even being an artist? It's just that quick. And all artists find that. And then Doobie the Cat says, I've been happier with my underpaintings than how they ended up when finished. Yes, I hear that from a lot of artists too. A lot of artists will say, my studies look so better than the finished paintings. And I'm guessing here, only because I hear this from so many other artists, the problem is there's an expressiveness, there's an initial confidence with those first strokes. And that confidence is communicated through brushstrokes. It's so crazy. This is like some random emotion, but a brushstroke can tell a person confidence. I know what I'm doing, that kind of thing. And those initial strokes and things that we do have all that confidence. And then as we go through the painting, we start to kill it by overworking, Yes, we're putting in the details, we're getting a bit more exact on things, but that confidence was lost, right? And I was talking about levels of artists, right? The artists that are starting out that are, starting to show their work in local galleries and things like that, they're pretty good, but they don't have like draftsmanship skills yet. These artists, and then the next level are artists that are that good, but they also have worked on their drawing and focused on that, and they kind of bring their artwork up to a level after that. The next level artists after that are the ones that have amazing draftsman skills. Okay. And not only can they put down brushstrokes expressively, but accurately the first time, right away. I mean, look at Sorolla, John Singer Sargent, even a bunch of abstract, like almost, contemporary abstract artists. Alex Kanefsky comes to mind. Anne Gale comes to mind. Alice Neel in Neel comes to mind. These are artists where you look at their paintings and you're like, I know that that's not exact proportions, but I don't care. It still looks like a good painting, like well formed. You could watch Richard Schmidt painting a portrait, and it's like, does it look exactly like that person? No, it doesn't, but it's still an amazing painting. How many of the paintings have we've seen out there that are just absolutely amazing, but were painted 200 years ago, and then they never looked like the person that they were painted by, or the subject sitting. Like Sargent was notorious for not grabbing exact likenesses, but making his sitters look like movie stars, more beautiful than they were in person. And that's why he was so famous. One of the reasons why he was so famous. I mean, heck yeah, I'll get a portrait by John Singer Sargent. It makes you look wonderful and gorgeous, right? That's what these affluent individuals wanted. A portrait, not a portrait of me, but the idea of me, but better. But I think that's like the next level of artists, the ones that can have that expressiveness, those initial strokes without need of all the extra, like having to work it to death kind of thing. And I think that's where our paintings start out well, where we have this expressive idea, and then we can just live with that. Like, we don't have to go further, or we have enough skill where we can just express it in as poetic amount of brushstrokes as possible, not have to be so verbose about it. That could be the problem. I haven't seen your work, so not sure, but it's what I see on a lot of artists, or a lot of artists have said about their own works. I've been happy with, okay, that's, I'll go and see them. Great. Slipknot, or Rada Bagata says, I'll go and see them. Slipknot fan says, I never really thought of how a feedback system could be so helpful. Yeah. If you want to learn something super fast, feedback loop. Try, test, correct. Try, and like when you're in the middle of it, and this was with drawing, like if you put down a line, you put it down first, then you test it with your reference, right? You do some measurements, and then you correct. Try, test, correct. Constantly your drawing get much better, a lot faster. After you've finished your drawing, find some objective way to see how close you were with your accuracy on things. Check out like I said, the previous live streams that I did where I show that in Photoshop, how you can use that as a tool, not a crutch, as a tool, okay, to help you get better. So eventually you can say, I don't need that, or I only need it at certain instances when I'm really struggling with the drawing. So that's so super important. Don't rely upon gridding or tracing, especially. Use them for when you need them. This is my opinion. Other illustrators out there that are so much better than me would say, nope, I trace all the time because I need to do it quickly. It's like a digital artist, Craig Mullins. Oh my God. Master artist, godfather of digital art, does photo bashing because he has to get things done really quickly. I don't care. His freaking paintings are some of the best paintings on the planet right now. Just godlike skills. Amazing. The GOAT for digital art. Yeah, 100%. Do I care that, he does photo bashing? No. That kind of thing. And we're not even going to talk about generated art. Not even going to bring it up because that is complete and utter BS. Don't even get into that. All that makes sense. Good. Glad you think that, Doobie. Appreciate it. Okay. How long has I been on this? Yeah, I'm at my 2-hour limit. I'm feeling it. My butt is starting to hurt. Sitting in this seat in the same place. Got a lower back is starting to kind of tighten up a little bit. That's another thing, guys, that I always talk about is figuring out, common humanity, empathy for yourself. How much time can you spend every day? It's something I talk about all the time. My limit is 1.5 hours to 2 hours every day, even though this is so much fun talking to you about stuff and going over and like just vomiting all that I know from the decades that I've been an artist. So much fun, but there's a limit to how much focus and energy, physical and mental, that I have for this painting thing. And if I start going beyond that, I start making mistakes and doing things I don't like. And I like the break in between because I can step back on this painting, look at it for a day, overnight, come back with fresh eyes in the morning, and then say, oh, this is where it needs to go now. Of course, this painting is going to take probably 5 or 6 days total. This is like the 4th day, so a couple more days on the painting. But right now, it's looking pretty good. The only thing I need to do, you got to remember this, because I painted thin, you can kind of tell. I wonder if I can zoom in. Actually, what I'm going to do is go to 4K so you can see more detail. Give me a second. Oh, jeez. Okay. Oh, is that blurry? It looks blurry to me. There we go. So I usually go to 4K sometimes. Yeah, see you later, Slipknot. I'll just be on here for a couple more minutes, but I usually go to 4K, so at the end you can see all the detail that's there, or it gets more pixels to you at least. But I wanted to show you how thin a lot of this paint is, how small that is. Look at my finger. My finger looks like this massive thing, right? Because it's so thin, and even though I'm painting on PVA size, like a PVA size paper, let me show you this. And the reason why I do PVA sizing, where can I do this? I'll do it up here in the hair. See how much I can go back to the paper on there, just scraping it out? That's a non-absorbent surface, or very little absorbency. You can see how that area is a little bit stained. I love it. That's, for me, the perfect absorbency for this paint, because it's harder to pick up in the lighter areas. I can kind of do that here. I can pick it up and make it lighter by picking up that paint, right? And change that value. If you paint on something like Yupo paper, which is like a very plastic paper. Hey, Matthew. Well, I just got here, but it's looking good. I'll have to watch it later. Good seeing your text, seeing your name here, but I'm sorry. I don't have a set schedule for this. I just show up, but I'm glad you're here for a little bit. I'm about to finish, and I'm talking about what I need to do right before I end this stream because it's so thin on here. Oh, let me talk about the Yupo paper. If this was on Yupo paper, and the problem that I have with Yupo paper is these shadowy areas. If I went into a Yupo paper painting, like, and this was initial and that was wet, I would pick up more of that shadow area than I would put down. And that's the problem with super non-absorbent surfaces like a metal or a Yupo paper, is it does that. But with this paper that has 2 coats of PVA size, I can pull some of that off if I want to. Like I have more control over it, but it doesn't just come off readily when I don't want it to. And it gives me that ability to scrape far back, pretty far back to the beginning of the paper itself. But I know this is because it's so thin, it's going to dry overnight. So I'm going to go through here, and in places where I know I need to bring some of these values and colors together, I'm going to make sure that the edges are as soft as can be. And why do I do that? I do this because it's harder to get a soft edge back when there's already like all these hard edges here, right? I'm okay with the hard edge separating like this thumb from the background, so I'll leave that hard edge. But here within this arm, I want that soft. I want it blended out. So I want to lose that edge there. This is up against white, so I'm just going to kind of take that into the white area. Yeah, I lost that drawing. That's okay. I'll be able to get that back, right? Not a big deal. And some of the blending I want to happen here as well. I'm actually going to bring a lighter color into the edge of this hand because that needs to be that way. Maybe I'll scrape it. No, I think that's good. I think that's good. And especially soften these edges around here. What I'm doing is I'm using my napkin to clean out as much paint out of this brush as possible. It's a very dry brush. And I'm just moving the paint around slightly that's on there, just tickling the canvas a little bit. Or the paper, I always say canvas, to move things around. The hair there, that edge, soften that out. That eyebrow, I don't want that hard edge there. I don't want focus on this face at all, so I'm going to soften out everything. I'll be able to bring this back. I have a general idea of where all that is. And you can even see as I'm softening some of this, it's going to unify this head. It's going to unify all these things. And even by doing that, just that simple softening, like a lot of focus came away from that face with those by softening those edges out and over to this hand. I'll do the same with the hair out here. It's very thin in this hair. The paint is. Just soften it. You lose that edge. And it'll pull all of the focus. Oof. Especially into the shoulder here. Need to soften all that out. Soft, 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 soft. It'll bring more of the focus into that hand. Definitely. I don't like this hard edge. This is part of the fabric, but I don't want that hard edge there, even though I know it's pretty hard within the reference. I am taking license, moving away from the reference and where it needs in order to tell the story that I feel I need to tell. So important. We're telling stories here. We're not just making a painting, not just copying from what nature gives us. We're going to use the impetus, what we're interested in, to tell the story. This would be a great pose to use to show off a wedding ring. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, put a big wedding ring right there. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Yupo paper. Is it written like this? Yes. Y-U-P-O. Perfect. It's great. I got, there's an orange cover that's like a medium weight. Then there's like a heavy weight that's, I think it's in a darker purple color. And then there's a translucent one that I got that I haven't painted on yet, which is interesting. It's fun to paint on. I would suggest like a indirect method of painting on Yupo paper, like started out in a like a burnt umber, like get all of your shadow shapes and everything set with burnt umber, let that dry, and then go back over it. But it's wonderful in the light areas to get all the way back to the paper. And the great thing about non-absorbent surfaces, and you guys may have tried this, if you've ever painted on a canvas that you just bought at the store with, and you haven't put any gesso on, maybe it has the manufacturer's gesso on, It's really absorbent. Oops, there we go. We got back. It's really absorbent that way, and it will absorb all the oil out of your paint, and all of your paints get really dull right away. It really dulls out the colors. But a non-absorbent surface, or somewhat non-absorbent like this, like you can get those intense colors because the pigment suspended in the oil is what makes things very intense. Yupo paper does that really well. It's actually really good, but it does have that problem where if you're trying to paint something dark and wet on wet, you will lift up that darker area and get back to the white too easily. So that's probably the only problem with it. Great. The other great thing about Yupo paper, God, I could talk forever. It's a plastic. It's a polypropylene. It's not a pulpy paper made out of wood like any other paper, but it's a plastic. So that's why it's very non-absorbent. And you would think, like, these are the questions I get on that with like something so non-absorbent. They're like, well, does the paint even stick to it? Does the paint even dry? Not only does it stick to it well, I mean, yes, you can pull it up in places, but it is some of the best surface I've ever drawn graphite on. It's amazing how smooth it is and non-absorbent it is, but it has this beautiful tooth to it. Very slight, where graphite will go on super exact, and then you can even blend it very subtly. I bet you it's probably one of the best drawing papers out there if you ever tried it with graphite. Not charcoal, definitely not charcoal, but graphite I think would work fantastic. Yep, Doobie, you're right. Rada is right. YUPO is then also when you feel where the canvas is showing through. Is then also when you feel where the canvas is showing through. I think maybe you're talking about with the Yupo paper where like you have the indirect approach, because I don't have that painting up anymore, but you do, because the darker areas, like within, you know, this reference here or within here, like if I was on Yupo paper and I wanted to just darken up this area a little bit, in these darker areas on Yupo paper, I would try to put down like a darker paint into that wet paint, and I would lift up more than I put down. But with an indirect approach, if that was already dark, somewhat dark with like a burnt umber or something like that, and it was dry or set, like the burnt umber the next day, it'll be so set that you can rub your hand all over it, nothing will come off, right? Most of the time. Don't quote me on that. Depends on, you know, you could be in Alaska and it'd be super cold and maybe that won't happen. But because that's there and that's set, if you lift up any, you're just showing the burnt umber through, which makes it even more interesting in your dark areas, those transparencies. And I think that's the best way to work with Yupo paper. But you keep your lighter areas completely free of any paint. And you got to be very careful with those lighter areas, just like with the fingers here, because that's where Yupo and these non-absorbent papers shine. The ability to pull, to have transparency that goes all the way, like the light will pass through the paint, hit the white of the paper, pass back through that paint, and then hit your eye. The intensity that you see there, you can't get that by adding like titanium white to anything. It's only through that transparency that you get that amazing look. It's gorgeous. It's just fantastic. Okay, right on. Nice. Okay, there we go. Painting's looking pretty good. I'm happy with where it's at. Thank you guys for all of the questions, comments. Like I said, I don't schedule this stream. I can't schedule my art time. It's when I have the time to do it. So I'll be on here. If I catch you in the future, that's great. If not, throw some comments in to my YouTube channel. Go to my website, especially chrisbevan.com, which is always down here at the bottom left. chrisbevan.com, right there. Sign up for my newsletter. You don't even have to like and subscribe here. You can do that too. But if you really like what I do and really want to support me, go to my website. Sign up for my newsletters. Number one, you know, that's the easiest. Buy my paintings, you know, that kind of thing, if you want to do that. And then eventually I'll have a learning platform on there soon, so people can support me monetarily. That'll be fun, right? But anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Doobie, for saying you love the progress. See you on the next one. Yeah, see you totally. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye, Rada Bagata. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.